Okay, we're going for another one of Darren's 1 to 11 games. I'm going to try it again in one take, so if I balls it, so be it. This time the variation is you go for a 1 to 11, but you have to pick one player from each of the 13 Champions League winning teams. So it's got to be players from a different country, although they can have won it with different teams. So you just got to pick like the team they won it for and make sure every team that has won a Champions League has been represented. The way I picked this one was it was a bit easier than the other one, but because you was very limited in what you could pick, whereas the other one was just like any players you can think of. So at least you could narrow it down from the start. So what I did, like the lesser teams, like Dortmund 96, Marseille 93, I went to them first, so I could just pick the best player I could find and then work from there. Whereas like a Real Madrid who have won it loads of times, you got a lot more of a pool to pick from. So that's sort of how I tried this one. So let's crack on with it. First up, goalie is Peter Cech. He won it with Chelsea and Czech Republic. So Peter Cech he was brilliant. If you think how good he was, and he did it with a crash helmet on because of a cracked skull, so think how better he could have been. The thing I always think about goalies in a top team is um, a lot of the top teams, the goalies don't have a lot to do. It always reminds me of David Seaman, where like for England, generally what would happen was he would face one shot a game and he'd save it. And that's very much like Peter Cech. He didn't really make many mistakes. He wasn't awesome with his feet, but he was good with his feet. And sort of every aspect of goalkeeping he was good at. So there was no like glaring weakness. But I always think of those Chelsea teams, like he would face one shot a game and he'd just deal with it. It'd be his positioning most of the time. I think later on he lost his agility, but when he was at his best, he just used to fill the goal. You'd look at the goal and think, "Oh bloody hell, can you score against that?" So yeah, Peter Cech, easy pick for me. On to left back, Bayern Munich, David Alaba. I think he's probably better now than he probably was when he was younger and faster. Like he's still a good athlete. When he was younger, he was more like a sort of rapid left back, could do the whole wing type thing, and he can still kind of do that. But I think he's got a lot more to his game. Plus, like Austria, so that's quite like a lesser country to pick from as well. So like nowadays, as he's got older, he can do a job at centre back as well as left back. He's probably one of these dickheads that can play defensive mid as well. But he can kind of do it all. He's sort of got a good football IQ. He's a great athlete, and he can even take free kicks and play in multiple positions. So that's an easy one. Right back. Now he's been a bit of a joke since, but at the time you've got to appreciate how good this guy was. Maicon. Now before Gareth Bale happened, that was the best right back in the world. Like he was unbelievable. He could, he had like the silky sort of skills going forward of a Danny Alves, but defensively he was like a colossus as well. And if you think pre Gareth Bale, like he was he was like the prototype right back. Like if you could build a right back, that's the guy you'd build. And when they actually won the Champions League, so he won it with Inter. When they won the Champions League, like he was just immense. Like he was absolutely immense. So sort of ignore the Gareth Bale side. I'm taking him as the peak, like Champions League winning icon. First centre back, and we have Marcel Desailly for Marseille and France. So again, this goes from the first one I looked up was Marseille '93 because I knew Desailly was there. I was kind of hoping someone else would jump out that I could pick because I wanted Zidane, but I couldn't really get him in. Like Desailly was by far the standout player in that Marseille team, and obviously he went on to Milan and then won the World Cup with France. So again, he's one of those defenders where if you was to pick like the attributes of a defender, what would you want? You'd pretty much build Desailly. He was just like an absolute phenomenal player. He plays centre mid as well, but. And then the guy who's partnering him, I had like a similar thing. It was the next team I looked for, so I went for Dortmund and Matthias Sammer. Matthias Sammer is one of those players that, for me personally, I just loved, and I really wished we'd have tried this sort of thing with Ledley King, where it's like the attacking sweeper, because it's just one of those things that's gone now, and like teams just don't do it. It's one of those positions that's just gone these days. But in the mid-90s, Matthias Sammer, he was like the attacking sweeper. And if anyone remembers Euro 96 well enough, like if you had him in your dream team, you pretty much won the dream team because, he was doing the defensive job at one end, but then he'd be the guy making the forward run and scoring at the other. And in the mid-90s, he was brilliant. He was really good. Centre mids. So I made a late change on my centre mids. The first one I've gone for, he was in my other 1 to 11 as well, Roy Keane. I won't bang on about how much I love Roy Keane, but I love Roy Keane. And it's Ireland as well, so again, there's not many Irish players to pick from. There was a lot of Man United players to pick from because this was actually my last pick. But so I could have tried to get a Giggs or a Scholes, or I could have tried something different. But for me, Roy Keane, like if I want a guy leading my team, that's the sort of guy I want. He's going to bring other players up a level, and he's going to put the shift in himself as well. He can do box to box. When he was younger, he was quite attacking. As he got older, he did the more defensive stuff, read the game, and controlled the pace of the game as well, which is quite underrated for a centre mid. It's not all about just charging about the whole time. And then by picking Roy Keane, this made me make a late change on my other centre mid, because I was assuming with Man United left, I'd probably pick an English player, but I didn't. So originally, my Liverpool centre mid was Xabi Alonso, obviously great player. Obviously not having an Englishman, I scribbled him out and I've gone Gerrard, because Gerrard was he was brilliant, weren't he? Like I never really liked him, but he was brilliant. Like, you can't deny it. He could do everything. In that final in 2005, he was like box to box. He was, by the end of the game, like in extra time, he was putting a shift in at right back. There was times in his career where he was defensive mid, like at the start, at the end. In the middle, he was a bit of both. He played on the right at times. He could just do everything. And I think if you sat him in there next to a Roy Keane and just said, you fucking charge about, do what you want, that's a pretty strong centre mid, I think. And it kind of needed to be with the attacking four I've gone for, because I've gone for like a 4-2, sort of 4-2-3-1 or a 4-2 with a 10, then 3 up front, however you want to play it. And all these guys are sort of, I've not really gone for like a Drogba type this time, so I needed a strong centre mid so the front four could play. That's sort of how I thought of it anyway. There was loads of number 10s you could choose from. I've just gone with one, like even from this team alone, there's a lot you could choose. I've just gone for one that's obviously he's a great player, but he's just a personal favourite of mine. One of these mythical players that we never got to see enough of because of the coverage. But like if you actually go back and look at him, he was like incredible. And that's Dejan Savicevic. Obviously, Yugoslavia, just around the sort of early mid-90s, like what a team they had. And Savicevic, even by the time he got to Milan, like watch old videos of Savicevic, he was incredible. He's like, he could play either side, he could play as the 10. He was just an absolute wizard with the ball. And if you look at the goal he actually scored in the Champions League final, yeah. The easiest pick again, Messi. Don't need to go into it. Best player that's ever played the game. I'm always picking Messi. No argument. So the other side, I've sort of gone with quite like with Messi and Savicevic, and the other guy I've gone with sort of quite skillful, creative players. So the other side, I just wanted a guy that was just a rampaging monster, and that was Gareth Bale at his best. Gareth Bale was unstoppable. He made an absolute mug of the right back I've chose. So that's a good example of how good he was. And that's when he was with us. When he went to Madrid, like he probably went the first few years, I'd say he went up a level even more. I think he got too muscular and got too many injuries and tried to be a bit too much like Ronaldo after that. But those first few years at Real Madrid and the last year with us, like he was just a joy to watch. Like he was just phenomenal. Like it's a shame that he kind of put on too much muscle, got the injuries. Whether he is more interested in golf these days, I don't know. I don't know what it is. But those few years, when he would just put his head down and burn people. That goal in the Copa del Rey final, fucking hell. Like that's the sort of thing he could do every week against every defender, including what at the time was the best. So my striker, I had the last two teams I had to pick from, well, I didn't really have. One of the teams I had to pick from, it was a no-brainer where I was going with there, so I'll get to that. But after that, it was Ajax and Juve, and there wasn't like really like an obvious one. Again, similar to Savicevic, it's a guy that can play 10, can play sort of on the sides, but really what it boils down to is just a guy I loved. And again, I think we didn't really get to see enough of him as Jari Litmanen. So Jari Litmanen was like at Ajax, he was just like he was just a wizard. He was so good. He's one of those players that can just see the whole picture of the pitch as he's playing, and he'll know who everyone is. He'll know the runs everyone's going to make. Probably a bit like Cruyff in the 70s, where he could just see the whole pitch. He knew what everyone was doing. He could drop deeper. So my team, like they can all move about. Messi could drop deep. Savicevic could go wide. Bale could pop up in centre forward if he wanted to. You know, it's quite interchangeable. With Litmanen, and it's a shame when he came to the Prem, he was kind of finished by injuries by then. Like he was quite injury hit later on. Obviously, Tottenham fans, we saw him score a cracking goal against us, so at least we got to see that, and I couldn't even be angry because I loved Litmanen. And again, it's a shame, and I mean, it's great, obviously, because Finland had a hero like Litmanen, but it's a shame that he never got to do it on the big stage at any point. So he never really had that one highlight summer when really someone as good as him should have been showcased. So you got your starting 11, then you have to pick a sub and manager. So my sub is going to be Juve Del Piero. So really, you could put him in as the striker. You could put him in either side. You could put him in as the 10. You know, it's similar to as I had him in the first one, the other team I made. Like, although I don't think he's like the most awesome player of all time, he was really good, especially like in the sort of late 90s. He was really good, weren't he? He can play a lot of positions, and he was probably of the players I could pick at this stage, he was probably the standout one I could pick from Juve at the time. So obviously, this team, if you need a goal, you could always, you know, take off a defender, take off one of the centre mids, or you know, you could put Del Piero in there and just have like loads of number 10s on the pitch and Bale chasing on the end of their through balls or something. So that was my thinking for that. Last one. So what we've got left is the Porto winning team, and my manager he's a bit blurry, Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho, say what you want, sort of Real Madrid onwards, you could say, where he just relied on money and he became a bit spiteful. And even at Tottenham, when he's trying to be sort of nicer these days, you can see that spitefulness coming out. In the early days in Porto, like he was like really good. And you speak of the things he was doing at training at the time, he was like, he really was that good at the time. So although he's become a bit bitter and a bit sort of reliant on money in the years to come, at first he was brilliant. He was really good. And I think he's the sort of manager that could manage those egos on that team. So that's my team. It's been a fun one to make, less stressful than the other one. Cheers. See you later.